the commission may have been briefed on this along the way. So I just, three things I want to cover: some background, and just give a status of where we are from a permitting standpoint, and then give the commission a little dive down into some of the challenges that we've had as we've gotten our first wave of permits issued. So I'm going to go ahead and host a presentation. I happen to come back home for the presentation. So if I have network qualities, I will, hopefully the commission will be patient with that. So hopefully everyone can see the screen. I would, can you all see this okay?
We can, Mike.
Okay, well, thanks for providing the opportunity to present the status of 5G deployment in the county and some of the context. We've been at this for probably a 3-year journey at this point. Just had some background slides. Difference, I think you're all, as a technology committee, you're probably aware of this, but macro cells have been around a lot longer. Small cells are a lot different. They operate in the licensed and unlicensed band. Much more dependent on the line of sight for coverage, but they're really seen as in our dense areas as being the next wave of technology to advance some Internet of Things and many other technology deployments. I would note in Arlington in specific, as an urban dense environment, they do line of sight is an issue there. Because they do have a smaller coverage footprint. Their height is a lot lower or a lot smaller, and they can be obstructed by our trees and other infrastructure in our public right-of-way. Some regulatory considerations that have been part of the discussion over time. The FCC has not necessarily given localities a lot of leverage in this deployment opportunities. So I would say that has informed our approach, the FCC regulations, and how we've approached the deployment strategy. In addition, though, I think as we've talked through this with many partners in the county, from AED, DTS, County Manager's Office, the County Attorney's Office, and then the Chamber of Commerce, and just a multitude of stakeholders, it was seen as a technology innovation that could be available for both our constituents and businesses to deploy future technology. So the benefit was perceived to be there. And so the county embarked on a process to develop what was called a master license agreement and a program where telecommunications could get on our infrastructure. I'll have more to say about that in a moment. That was eventually approved by the county board in July of 2019. And so after that, we had vendors that could execute voluntarily a master license agreement and attached to some of our infrastructure. Some of the legislative timeline, I'm not going to read this, just some background, but it has been ongoing since really 2017, and FCC regulations were tracked along with state regulations. On the top, you can see some of the county adopted ordinances and regulations. We first started in 2017 allowing the deployment on third-party poles, and that was primarily in the Arlington County Verizon and Dominion Energy poles, and they are in our right-of-way in a large portion of our public streets. And then that ultimately, after thorough review, we entered into this master license concept that they could attach to our streetlight poles specifically. So as part of that master license agreement approval process, DOT evaluated a number of our infrastructure, a lot of our infrastructure in the public right-of-way, and due to safety concerns, determined not to deploy on traffic signals. They're primarily there for the efficient and safe movement of traffic. County did look at streetlight poles as an opportunity. We did not provide the allowance for small wireless facilities to deploy with their own vendor poles. Some jurisdictions did that, and actually Alexandria has done that to some extent. What we were trying to prevent, though, is just a proliferation of poles in the public right-of-way, because we already have everything from benches to streetlights to trash cans in a very dense urban environment. So that was one of the distinctions as we've reviewed this. So I'm not gonna, these are spec sheets, but I don't want to get into the details. This is a Carlisle pole on the left, and if this pole, and then this is a Cobra head pole. You've seen these in different areas if you've driven around the county, but these poles were incorporated after a year-long design process into our standards. I would say they're very different than our current pole structure. Our Carlisle pole, you've seen those in various locations in the county, but they had to incorporate the communications radio infrastructure inside the pole, and then on the top of the pole there's the antenna. It's at different heights on the Carlisle versus the Cobra head. Generally, the Carlisle poles run about 18 feet, and nominally 28 to 30 feet on our Cobra heads. I would say the inventory in the county, just for informational purposes, Arlington County maintains about 40% of our streetlight inventory. Dominion Energy has the other 60%. So when you look at this and the concept of attachments, which I'll show you in a minute, it puts some context to why you might see more permits on the third-party poles, because there's simply more of those in our right-of-way. So public engagement, that's always something that's very important in Arlington County. We did do what we could in this space, but I'll put some context to this. Public engagement in this sense, we tried to give as much opportunity as possible pre-pandemic for individuals to take a look at the designs that were provided. Went to the business community. We had websites. We also provided some online engagement. It wasn't a land use decision public engagement process, and we ultimately modified our ordinance again in 2019. We also had a pilot deployment that I'll speak to in a minute. So the pilot deployment depicted here that occurred actually in July 2019. It was admittedly in our commercial corridor at 14th Street North and North Courthouse Road, very close to the Courthouse Plaza, where the main Arlington County Government Center is. And so this is a look at the pole. I mean, from a commercial standpoint, you got about a 26-inch base. You got the double arm Carlisle here, so it's got a scale and a fit that may work in commercial spaces. A little more challenging when you get out in the residential. But this was our pilot that occurred in 2019. So, question I'll just answer right up front. That we've been asked by the community: how is the pole location determined? Do we do a siting process? Is it subject to a vote from the community, like some of our neighborhood conservation projects? The location is determined primarily by vendor coverage requirements and county streetlight standards. Because keep in mind that the streetlights already exist, and we're not required to put in new streetlights for this deployment. So there is some flexibility. I mean, we do have some nuances in the right-of-way where this can be massaged by our traffic engineering group, but generally the vendor determines where they want to attach to our infrastructure. And the county has limited ability for movement in that area because of just that. We have to not only keep the streets illuminated per our standards, but we also, the vendor has to provide their own studies on the propagation studies they need for adequate 5G coverage. We do, I would note, have the ability as a lever to control the overall inventory of our streetlights that are available for attachments. And I'll digress for just a second. One area that we've done that as a collective moratorium is in the Pentagon Crystal City area, where with the advent of H2Q, Amazon, along with a myriad of capital projects in that space, we just put a hold on that area. Just no vendor poles in that location up until now. Are relaxing those standards this fall, but we will still have a moratorium on some of that area for deployment, because it really doesn't make a lot of sense for us to be for the vendors to be paying for these poles to be put in just to have them ripped up by either private development or our capital projects. So the stats on our 5G deployment. The county, since the master license agreement was approved, we've had 4 vendors specifically: AT&T, Crown Castle, Verizon, and Seed LLC. In Seed LLC, particularly in one area, the Crystal City, Pentagon City area, actually execute master license agreements with the county. That's required as a pre-requirement or prerequisite to actually getting a permit. So not just anybody can come into the county and get a permit for a 5G. You can't be So I'm back with you, but I have to rehost the document. I'm sorry. I lost it for a minute.
It's all right. We've all been there, Mike.
Yeah. If I freeze, I look better. So we had, as of July 2021, the stats are 128 permits applied for our streetlight poles. Actually, the number there is not 21, it's 18 permits issued and a corresponding number under review. We've had a significant number of permits attached to Dominion and Verizon infrastructure. Those attachments are typically much higher in the space. And then zoning permits have issued 208 private property 5G telecommunication permits since the 2017 timeframe. So primarily third-party poles and zoning permits for these on private property have been the majority of the permits issued to date. So that's where we stand from a permitting standpoint at this juncture. So I want to just drill down at this point and just give you a few details of some of the challenges. You can see this particular street light in a neighborhood can be challenging with that just a little over 2-foot base to locate in the community. We've seen some scale and fit issues. And one of the things I would note is in some cases, they've been located directly or real close proximity to your Dominion Energy poles. In this case, this is a Dominion Energy pole, literally 25 foot from the 5G pole. And so we would prefer them to be on infrastructure other than our street light if possible, but this just shows you some of the challenges there. It's also presented when you have that width, the 26-inch width, and in a 2.5 utility strip, 2.5-foot utility strip, it can present sidewalk encroachment issues. And we have to maintain our ADA accessibility in the county. So a few lessons learned. County is considering some restrictions in designated zoning areas from attaching to Carlisle poles due to several factors that I'll just hit on briefly. ADA sidewalk access width issues I've mentioned. Scale and fit issues are challenging in the residential zones. This pole design was originally piloted and really designed more for the commercial corridor areas. And I'll show a map in a minute. We do want to balance the need to deploy the technology, though, with the pole design. So this is a consideration. And then I think the other thing is adequate third-party poles are available in the majority of the locations to accommodate the necessary wireless coverage. We've been able to analyze that with our GIS system, so that's been a consideration. And I just note that of the 128 permits applied for on county-owned poles, the overwhelming majority of those have those poles in the same block area. Just a note on number 5, though, as I showed you some of the challenges, we are enforcing the clear zone requirements and ADA requirements. And so some of the poles that I showed you are having to be adjusted or even in some instances removed to accommodate those, because we have to adhere to current standards that are out there for our roadway design. So this is not the most legible at this scale, but this is just shows you the main areas for our inventory. And what you see here in yellow is a sea of Carlisle poles. We have over almost 5,500 Carlisle poles in the county that we administer, maintain, and operate. We have very few, just under 400, 380 Cobra head poles that we maintain out in the residential areas. But there's a lot higher number, almost 11,500 Cobra heads that Dominion Energy actually maintains out in the typical residential areas. You will see some infusion or an integration of the Carlisles into some of the residential zones that are shown in the pink pink type color here on the map. I think that a lot of those have occurred because we've incorporated them as part of roadway projects where we've offered the Carlisle as part of that project. So the primary location that these were envisioned, at least the design of the pole that we had intended, were for your Ballston, Roslyn corridors, Crystal City, along Columbia Pike, and some of the other major commercial corridors in the county. So taking a look at the residential zones that you see there, particularly the R6, R8, R10, R20 zones, and because a lot of those have narrower walks, the homes are much closer to the curb road section. So that's under consideration right now. Common questions: are the frequencies harmful? There's a lot of different information out there, and the members of this committee they've probably done their own research, and are some may be even more up to date on some of that than myself. I am not a health scientist. What we have looked at this information from various sources, from NIH, CDC, and they tend to be non-conclusive, I guess, is what I would summarize. I would tell you, and even the FCC regulations on this have really been challenging for localities, though, because the statute prevents us from directly dealing with or to making local decisions on deployment based on the directly or indirectly the health issues related to 5G. So I would just note that some of those considerations are out there for us now as we consider next steps with the program. I certainly answer questions. I would say on the health issues, I didn't mean to minimize the discussion in that area, and there may be questions, but I would note that what we have under consideration in the process of developing our MLA, Master License Agreement, has a lot of terms and conditions. We have the ability to pull the actual vendor request and get the actual vendor data on radiation emissions per location. They have to provide that to us upon request. And we've also dialogued with Ruben Varghese, our public health director. And, I think the conclusion there, I would say to the commission, is that there's need for more study in that area. And there's opportunities and thoughts that he has on that may be embarked on eventually. But we have dialogued with them as part of this process and didn't take it lightly. But as I said, FCC has somewhat undermined our ability to regulate based on that. So with that, I've taken up some time. I want to turn it open to questions from the commission that I might be able to answer.
Thanks so much, Mike. That gave us a good overview. Questions from the commission? Frank? Hey, Frank. You're still muted.
Mute, Frank.
There you go.
Now. So actually, I didn't have a question, but I did have an update on the FCC's RF regulations. So I was going to provide it in my regular report, but I figure since it's relevant to what Mike was talking about. The D.C. Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals just recently ordered the FCC to provide a reasoned explanation that its guidelines adequately protect against harmful effects of exposure radio frequency radiation unrelated to cancer, such as reproductive and neurological issues. So the court said that the FCC is on sound footing with respect to answer, but they need to provide a reasoned explanation with respect to these other health-related issues. And this court's decision was in response to the FCC's 2019 order reaffirming its 1996 RFR radio frequency radiation limits. So the FCC is going to have to address again and provide a reasoned explanation on the additional health effects non-related to cancer.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
Questions or comments?
Yeah, I have just a comment. Mike,
Yeah,
how
Andrew.
are these slides accessible? These are great.
I would. I provided them to Angela, Jack, and with the idea that she could get that out to the group here for
Okay.
further information, Andrea. So yeah, and I know, Frank, that the thing that is challenging, we've hoped at the local level, and I'm not an attorney, and I don't pretend to be one on TV, but I think it was the Ninth Circuit last August I believe it was Ninth Circuit that really, I mean, the FCC has pretty much reaffirmed a lot of the earlier rulings. And I would just not get into specifics there because they pretty much confirmed some of a lot of their previous rulings on localities' ability to regulate that have just continued our approach towards this. So, Frank, any information you have on that, though, is helpful from the health perspective. But I think what they did last summer was just to continue the current approach. So I haven't seen any real, I mean, you can point to a couple of things because this is going to continue to be litigated and discussed through FCC and other channels from different advocacies, but appreciate the comment.
Kevin?
Hi, Mike. Thank you so much. You talked about the distribution of the antennas, and you get see different coverage based on the existing attachments you're going to do to existing infrastructure. And you talked about the profile you showed of the poles themselves, and the lighting is relatively low impact. It fits well into the community. Will those antennas, once they're placed, are they going to be shared by the multiple carriers so that minimal build out in that regard? Or
yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah, and so what our master license agreement specifies one carrier per pole. All right, so and frankly, with the infrastructure there, it maxes out the pole with the one carrier. But there are different hosting models, like Crown Castle is a neutral host provider, and actually 2 of the 4 master license agreement entities are neutral host providers, which means they actually will work with multiple vendors to get into their radio equipment and provide the coverage. So while it's not totally maybe the answer that you were thinking there, Kevin, because there's different models of hosting, I don't think we'll see that from Verizon or AT&T, but some of the other carriers provide that opportunity for multiple vendors to work through their equipment. So does that help, Kevin?
Sure, and that's kind of similar to what's happening with existing wireless technology now, right? American Tower, Crown Castle, they have neutral hosting. So
right.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks.
All right, Jackie?
Good evening. Thank you for this presentation. It's very helpful. I did miss the beginning, so if I ask a question that you've gone over, chastise me and tell me to come back later. We get a lot of questions at the local level about this new thing and how does it affect them and how do they complain about it and who do they talk to and that kind of sort of thing. How much of what is in the PowerPoint that you've just given us is available online for the public? And who should we refer them to? Because I think the public education on what is this and what are my rights, as far as how close it is to me and things like that are very important.
Yeah, Jacqueline, that's a great question. We do have a website for small wireless facilities, and it's kind of dual purpose or multiple purposes. Some of it talks about the vendor process of how you get the permit, but then there's another part of the page that talks about resources, and on that page they provide a lot of the health links, the research that's been done, and so that's available. So we've tried, I guess, to answer, we've tried to be transparent with that, while not drawing necessarily conclusions on that issue. We've tried to provide data, and ultimately, when we get asked these type of questions, it's what I said later in the presentation: is we are trying to deploy this technology. I think probably the most objective party and a person that Ruben Varghese has been great to work with, and the public health director, he's very knowledgeable of this. I think he's a dispassionate individual about, he doesn't have a stake in the game either way. So we ultimately, when people have those kind of concerns, we will refer them to our public health director. But to be quite frank, over the last 18 months, Ruben's had other priorities with the pandemic. But I think that it's a real
it's really more a generic, it's a more generic question. If we get at a civic association or neighbor to neighbor,
Okay.
we get letters of complaints. My civic association has received several individuals who've written and said this thing has appeared and I don't like it and it's too close to me. And what I'm asking is, who should we send them to, and what can we say that will help them understand what their rights are, etc. Obviously, as a source, Dr. Varghese is terrific, and
Right.
and the links, but who's the person who can actually interact with the civic associations and the individuals?
Yeah, I think I think I would answer that by noting that we have permit staff in the Louis Arise Development Services office. The permitting agents are probably the best resource there. And if there's really concerns, now, like I said, we've only issued our first initial round of permits. We do have, as I indicated, the ability to pull the emissions data from the, or request that from the vendors on some of the, radiation.
Could you just post a contact on the website, in the website you're local? I'm just wanting to have a public focus section of that website rather than having it be primarily focused towards the vendors. Just a section that will say, for questions from, individuals or whatever, or for the public, here's the contact. So it's clear that it's not vendor contact.
Yeah. Okay. Let me look at that. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Thanks, Jackie. Any other questions? I see some hands up, but they might be old hands up. Any other final one last question before Mike, we let Mike get to hit back to his evening? All right. Well, Mike, thank you so much. I reserve, if we have any other questions, we may come back just to clarify some things and make sure that we're clear. The presentation was really helpful to give the history, set the stage, and as you noted, it'd been a while since ITAC had been briefed. So in the beginning we were, so it's good to hear the update and where we are. So we really appreciate you making time on your Wednesday night to come brief us.
Okay. Well, thank you a lot. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. You take care.
Okay.
All right. Just in case there's any public comment, we'll take it. Any public comment out there? Anyone on phone or besides the commission members? All right. Well, we will go to welcoming. We're so excited to have our 2 new members, so it's just delightful. Thank you. We were so lucky that both of you were willing to serve. So Andrea, if you wouldn't mind giving us a brief, excuse me, a brief overview. And for some reason, we're getting background, Andrea. I'm not sure why.
So so I am in I'm in the cyber teach program at Marymount University. So we are actually going through that as well. So I call myself trying to mute that as well, but that's what y'all are hearing. So let me kind of stand up a little bit.
That's right.
But hello, everyone. My name is Andrea Wingo. I am currently residing here in Arlington, Virginia. I am a cyber detection analyst, currently working for Mantech at CIA headquarters. I'm also a doctoral student at Marymount University, and I am a member of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. So I am honored to be a part of this Information Planning Commission. Thank you so much for just selecting me, and I will do my best from now until 2024. But I look forward to meeting you all, working with you all, and just, planning and getting things together here in Arlington. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And a shout out to Krista, because Krista is the one who recommended that Krista Jones, any of you who have worked with Krista, who's left the county now, but it was wonderful. Krista said, you all to apply for this. So Andrea, I'm so glad that she was the bridge. So we really appreciate it. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
and it should be a real interesting year. So we're delighted to have you at the beginning of the year. And Gary, Frank, you've known Frank a long time, and so and you visited ITAC before on with another hat, so welcome. Oh, you're muted at the moment. I know, double mute. It's the way of the world. We'll get there. Yep, you're unmuted there. I think, let me make sure that I haven't muted you for some reason on our list here, if I can unmute you here. Nope, you're unmuted here, so you look good. It's a test. We know what it's like. Nope, we can't hear you yet. I'll tell you what, play around with that and we'll come back. We have someone else to welcome and we'll come right back, Gary. Richard has, as I mentioned to you all, David is in an acting role because, Jack, am I correct that your staff member is now CIO? Is it Loudoun County, or do I have the county right?
Yes, he is. He's starting
Yeah.
September 2nd. He's the CIO of Loudoun County.
So a nice career development move. And so David is taking some acting leadership roles, and Richard has agreed to be our liaison. So Richard, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little, I know you've attended our tech commission meeting, but just I don't think people have really had an opportunity to know your background. So if you wouldn't mind
Sure.
spending a couple minutes.
Sure. So hello, everybody, and welcome to our new members. My name is Richard Archambault. I always pronounce it because it's a mouthful. I have been with the county just over 2 years. And I look after information security, privacy, and our regulatory side. I work for Jack, and I have a staff that works for me in those 3 areas. I come to the county after many years in the film industry, film and television, looking after security for the big movies, but moved to Arlington to be closer to family and to try something new. So I've been here and enjoy it very much. I will be your staff liaison. Effectively, if you have questions that you'd like to add to the agenda or topics you'd like to hear from county staff, Mary has a direct line to me and can request people come and add comment or answer questions. And we're just here to help illuminate you on various topics and explain how the county works, and here to help guide you. I am, because of where I work in security, I will probably be the first one to tell you if it's something we can't talk about. But for the items that we can talk about, we're happy to provide the right staff. So welcome. Thanks for welcoming me, and we'll enjoy the next period together.
Oh, great. Thanks, Richard. And thanks. You were the one who made the connect with Mike Moon. So really appreciate you getting that done for us. Really, that's wonderful. And it's great to have you. Great to have you on board. Gary, I'm just looping back to see if we've got voice and sound yet. Do we have? Not yet. All right. Okay, not yet. So so we'll move. Frank, you want legislative update for us?
All right, I'm unmuting now. Just not used to going this early in the meeting, so.
I know you're in shock, aren't you?
That's right. I did want to add one comment on the RFR decision. The FCC's authority in this citing has been upheld in all other forums up to this point, particularly with respect to preemption of local zoning, setting a shot clock. So there's a whole host of areas where the FCC has basically preempted local regulations on this. And I would anticipate that even on the health effects, that's going to be ultimately an FCC primary jurisdiction, that it's not going to wind up going back to the state and local governments to be able to hand down. I don't think we're going to have 50 different or 15,000 different RF standards across the country. I think we're going to wind up having that be a FCC. I think they'll go back and revisit the record on the health effects unrelated to cancer, and I think that will, that they'll have to just provide a more reasoned explanation as far as their decision. I'll have to weigh all the evidence that's been submitted in that, and they may open it up open the record up for additional comment. All right, in other areas, let's see. Actually, on June 28th, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear an appeal of the Ninth Circuit decision denying most challenges to the FCC small cell moratoria order establishing the 60-shot clock for existing structures and 90 days for all other applications, and that the fees be reasonable. And the $270 fee that the Arlington is charging, I think, has been sort of deemed to be presumptively reasonable. So, and local jurisdictions do retain some authority over small cell aesthetics, but can no more. But such regulations can be no more burdensome than imposed on any other technology. So basically, we've got that sort of FCC authority being reaffirmed by the Supreme Court declining to hear the Ninth Circuit's decision. Something else that's been in the news a lot, the Senate bipartisan infrastructure bill, which has been hopping around, and we now know that the House will take a vote on it September 27th. The bill would provide $40 billion to states to expand high-speed broadband, and $14 billion to enhance the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program, the EBB, that would actually wind up reducing down the pipe, the monthly discount from $50 to $30 a month. And pricing, it is going to require pricing transparency requirements, and there's going to be a $2.7 billion for digital literacy. So, there's a recent report that the cost of broadband at all price points has steadily dropped since 2015. Speeds offered in most popular tiers have increased by 126% from 2015 to 2021. The University of Tennessee is going to develop a smart corridor in downtown Chattanooga under a $1.37 million grant from the National Science Foundation. Sounds very similar to the Clarendon project. The project's going to take data from cameras and sensors to find ways to enhance public safety, traffic, and air quality, as well as study how 5G technology will help improve residents' lives. Verizon is supplying laptops, mobile hotspots, and smartphones to students from low-income households in 13 states, including Virginia, to help cope with hybrid learning environments this fall. Its public sector unit is working with nonprofits and state agencies to distribute the devices. The new stir shaken protocols are helping to decrease the number of illegally spoofed robocalls, with a 3% decline from June until July. Actually, today the FCC has issued over $5 million in new forfeitures to a couple of robocall players. Senators Rubio and Feinstein are behind legislation that would lead the State Department to designate a country that supports cyber criminals as a state sponsor of ransomware. The legislation would also strengthen cryptocurrency regulations and would mandate development of cybersecurity protocols for infrastructure. Verizon 5G home fixed wireless broadband expanded to 52 cities. The 5G home product has no data caps or throttling, has a 1 gig is the max with 300 megabits per second typical speeds. $50 per month is the price for existing wireless customers, and $70 per month for those without a mobile plan. New customers will receive a free streaming TV device and a Samsung Chromebook. Let's see, Virginia lawmakers are allocating $700 million in federal pandemic relief funding with a goal of connecting every household to high-speed internet by 2024. For a project to be eligible, it must deliver at least 25 megabit per second down and 3 megabit per second up. The Northam administration anticipates funding a mixture of medium-sized ISPs, electric co-ops, and municipal providers. It views publicly owned networks as risky endeavors where they replicate services that already exist at scale in the private or nonprofit sector. Verizon is launching a new education portal, Verizon Innovative Learning HQ, as part of its digital inclusion initiative. Anyhow, that's what I've got to report this month.
And you've got a question from Jackie about where's the testing location you mentioned? I'm not sure if it's
Oh, that was
Chattanooga or Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Yes.
Jackie, is that what you were?
Yes, I'd like to go and take a look at it. If you have any links or contacts that I could use, that would be helpful.
I don't, but I'm sure if you look under University of Tennessee, they probably have something on
Okay.
that. I know that NSF is involved also. They may have something on it. And I think I just recently saw that University of Tennessee is going to be doing some additional test beds up in the Knoxville area as well. But this particular grant was for Chattanooga.
And it was an NSF grant?
Yes, $1.37 million.
Wow. Okay. I'll look at NSF.
Yeah, that'll work. That'll find it, Jackie. Follow the money.
Yeah. Thank you.
Since we do any other questions or comments? I had one question for you, Frank, but anyone else have questions, comments? Frank, was there any? I know Rochester was. Remember, it was challenging the small cell. Is that made its way through the courts? Have we had any update on them, or did that get settled and moved on?
I haven't seen a decision on the specific Rochester case, but I assume that at this point, the ninth, even though Rochester's not in the Ninth Circuit, that if there would be a conflict between the circuits, then the Supreme Court might have another crack at it. But I've not seen the decision in the Rochester case.
Right. Okay. And then what you read about the high-speed internet from Virginia?
Yes.
Where is that in the process at this moment? Because when we get to legislative priorities, that's one of the things we were talking about. Is that just Northam's executive order, or is he trying to get it through the legislature?
I think it may. Well, it indicated that the report I saw said Virginia lawmakers are allocating it. So I assume it was that. I just saw a report. I didn't see the actual action. So. Okay.
But we don't know what time frame that is yet, right?
No. This may just be sort of a preliminary. Preliminary action with respect to the federal pandemic relief funding.
Got it. Okay, great. I'm going to take chair privilege, and I'd love for everybody to introduce themselves to Andrea and Gary. And Gary, when you have voice again, we'll come back to you. But if we could just go around the room, because Andrea and Gary have introduced themselves, but I don't think they know. They might have heard some of the names on the commission, but it'd be good for them to know. And I'll just call out Frank. You might as well start, and then we'll go to John and Mike and Jackie and Kevin.
Okay, I'm Frank Jazza. I'm a retired communications attorney. I was at the Arlington-based, Roslyn-based Fletcher, Heald and Hildreth communications law firm for 35 years. I've served on ITAC, or the Tech Commission, the newly branded Tech Commission, for a long period. I have previously served as chair, and before that I was vice chair again. So somehow I'm going around the merry-go-round here. I've provided that legislative report for many years now, so I look forward to continuing to do so.
No, that's wonderful. Thanks, Frank. John, who you already heard, has a new baby girl. But besides that, Hey, John.
Hi, welcome to the commission. My name is John Burke. I'm a lifelong Arlington resident. I'm a bureaucrat by day and as a IT program manager for the federal government. And by night, I'm a volunteer pain in the rear. So happy to have you aboard.
And John has the distinguished that tech commission was how he coined the phrase. So we are delighted that he was able to come up with that compromise. Andrea and Gary, you have no idea how long we were on that one. So Mike Carlton. Whoop, you're on mute
You're on
now,
mute.
Mike. Double mute. There we
Is
go.
that better?
Yes, it is.
Hi,
Got it.
I'm Mike Carlton. I'm a retired federal CIO, retired from the federal government 10 years ago after 35 years of service. I think it was the last 11 of them that I was the Chief Information Officer, first at the U.S. General Services Administration and ultimately at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Welcome.
Thanks, Mike. Kevin?
Hi, nice to meet you. Been on the commission a while. Have a long background in telecommunications planning. Currently, I'm doing federal contract work. Was supporting the enterprise infrastructure solutions federal contracting process for the new services to the government, federal government across agencies. And currently, I'm doing credentialing work for GSA. So, nice to meet you.
I bet Mike would have some interesting conversations with you, Kevin, around GSA. Jackie.
Good evening again. Jackie Snelling. I'm longtime Arlington resident, active in Civic Federation, so particularly focused on how all of the things that we do impact the public and public services. Retired federal employee at FEMA, where education for the public, including cybersecurity and things like that. Also, a lead related to emergency communications methods used for reaching the public, everything from the federal alert system to local PSAPs and coordination with NOAA and whatnot. That's it.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Jackie. And Jack. And then we'll go on to Kevin and Luis, or Telcom. So, Jack?
Yeah,
This
hi,
is Joshua, by the
Dawson.
way. I'm on.
Okay.
Beg your pardon? Who's on?
Oh, sorry to jump in. I just want to also make sure I get in here too, because I want to introduce myself to you. This is Joshua, but go ahead. Sorry, Jack.
Joshua, I didn't see you on the, you've called in, right, Joshua?
No, I'm dialed in. Yep,
You dialed
sorry.
in. Got it. No, that's okay, Joshua. Go ahead, and then we'll go to Jack. Go ahead.
Oh, sure. Okay, sorry, Jack. Hi, my name is Joshua Farah. I'm a White House Presidential Innovation Fellow. I'm detailed to Department of Veterans Affairs Office of Resolution Management, Diversity and Inclusion, where I work on anti-harassment, discrimination, and violence efforts for the Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm here on ITAC as an Arlingtonian. I'm mostly interested in county data, and I would love to hear more sometime about how you propose to make more service of information, service data available through publicly accessible dashboards. Thank you.
Thanks, Joshua. All right, Jack, over to you.
Yeah, hi, Jack Belcher, CIO, Arlington County. Appreciate the time to introduce myself to you folks. It's a pleasure to have you join Andrea and Gary, to have us join us. The commission plays a key role in terms of the county. Remember now, you're an advisory commission to the board. You're not an advisor to the manager. And so there's a distinction there, and I think it's important to understand that. In terms of the way the county government works, and I'm sure you're aware of this, is that we're a county manager form of government. So it's much like the British system. We're public service, and so the manager has responsibility and authority to direct county staff. County board can provide guidance to the manager, but ultimately it's the manager's decision to make. So the challenge we have, and we frequently have problems or issues in this, is that you can provide guidance to the board, and the board can provide guidance to the manager, but ultimately it's the manager who makes the decisions in terms of what we do. And so one of the challenges we have, and Mary and I and Frank have talked about this, is the breadth of scope of the commission. So much happens in technology, as you all know, on a daily basis, and the cadence is such that we're really going to have to really focus our energies to make sure we're providing necessary guidance as we need it. And we're looking for that. From a county manager's standpoint, he wants to hear what you're thinking. But again, it's trying to do that in a manner that is before events take place. And so that's a challenge we always face. So it's a pleasure to have you on board. It's a good group you're joining. Mary and Frank are great leaders, and it's a pleasure to have you join us. So that's who I am and what I do.
Thank you. We've already heard from Richard and Angela. Are you there, Angela?
I'm here.
Excellent.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I'm Angela Easterwood. Excuse me. And my primary department is human resources. I'm also administrator for Jack Belcher in the DTS and Department of Management and Finance. I have a team of 5 women that run the county. At least they think they do.
They do.
It's good.
So if you need anything, you can always reach out. Thank you.
No, it's wonderful. Angela it's been so wonderful having your support, Angela. And then also, Gary and Andrea, for your benefit, we also Comcast and Verizon usually send representatives to our monthly meeting, and we're fortunate to have very consistent. We have Kevin from Comcast and Louise from Verizon. So Louise is would you introduce yourself?
Of course. I'm Louise Anderson. I handle the FiOS TV franchise agreement between Verizon and Arlington County. But I've been known to be tasked for all things Verizon, finding a person sometimes if there are other issues. That's fine. But I have been in this position since December of 2013. So I've pretty much been consistently attending these meetings for a long time. So happy to be here and look forward to working with you.
Thanks, Louise. And Kevin?
Hi, Kevin Broadhurst. I do government and community affairs for Comcast in our what we call the Beltway region, which is DC, Virginia, Maryland. But I'm the representative to this commission and an Arlington resident, and happy to be here.
Yes, we heard Dad.
Yeah, it's dinner time here, so I much prefer to be there. So.
And Mary, I think it's important to note both with Kevin and Louise, while we have cable franchise agreements, they're purely for television provision. They're not for internet access. And I think there's a tendency at times to say that because we have a franchise agreement with Comcast and Verizon, that our authority extends over internet provision. It does not. And it's only for television. So I just want to make that clarification for Andrea.
Yes.
And Gary.
And that those negotiations are coming up. So the commission, as Richard and I've we've talked about it, the commission will have a role in the public engagement piece, but that's on down the road. But those agreements are coming up, so you'll hear more about that as Richard kind of outlines what the process will be in the years to come as the negotiation unfolds. Gary, do we have any luck here? Has technology? I mean, this is a story of of how fun technology is. Yeah, no, you're still. You've come out and come back in, right? Okay.
Hey, Gary, I've sent you some. It is a bubble up top there that says it looks like a circle with a dot in the middle. And what I've sent you some suggestions. I don't know if you can click on that. You should see those text messages.
In the chat. Yeah, in the chat, there's some. Yeah, you're getting tech help from the CIO. It's always.
Yes, that's bad.
Thank you.
That is bad.
It's a one-stop shop here. Well, thanks everybody. Did I miss anyone? I'm looking. Did anyone? Did I miss anybody on the list? The we I really appreciate, Frank and I have really appreciated the response even during our summer break in July when we asked for legislative priorities. So thanks very much. We actually made the deadline. They extended it for some commissions who weren't able to. So we wanted to show you that before that. I just wanted to give you a couple of updates because, yeah, thank you, Angela. We'll get to that in a second. Frank and I were met with Takis, our county board liaison. He gave us feedback that he's really finding our perspective and the kinds of areas that we're focused on very helpful, and wanted to make sure that we relayed that to the rest of the commission. And there were a couple of things that happened while we were on break. One was I signed a letter with the other commission chairs, probably, I think there are about 50 commission chairs for Arlington with the Arlington Way, and I think there were about 25 or 27 of us that signed a letter requesting that the commission stay virtual, because I'm not sure if all of you knew, but there was some debate about whether we would go back face to face. But now with the Delta variant and the county chair, Matt, consulted with the county legal county lawyer and said, yes, we will stay virtual. And we've actually had better participation since we've been virtual. So we're pretty happy with it. And actually the other commissions have experienced that as well. So at the moment we will remain virtual, and our September meeting will be virtual, but that was one of the things that transpired while we were on break. The other thing that occurred was the request for legislative priorities. And those of you who've been around, we typically the profile for that is around the kind of the rhythm is around November is when the board begins to select and decide what priorities they are going to collectively in Northern Virginia submit to Richmond. And so if I don't, can we make that a little bigger, Angela, for my old eyes, maybe? Is that possible, or is it just the way I have it on my, up there? Ah, there we go. Is that better? Can everybody see that? Is that better? Or do you need a little bigger? Gary's coming back in. That's good. So thanks to, hello? Gary, hear you, maybe. Gary?
Can you hear me?
We can hear
Ah.
you, Gary. Yes, we can. We can hear you. We can
Hey,
hear
how
you.
about that?
Okay, go ahead, Gary. We don't want, yay, look at that. You get claps and everything. So please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Mary. Sometimes nothing is easy here, but
right.
first of all, I'm really happy to be here. My name is Gary Thayer. I've been an Arlington resident for many years, along with my wife, Deborah, and I'm a retired federal government attorney with 35 years of experience, primarily in telecom regulation and intellectual property. Most of my career was at the Federal Communications Commission. Most recently, that was in the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, where the focus of my division was security and communications reliability issues. I also served in two other of the primary offices at the Commission, those being the Office of Engineering Technology, which essentially provided technical advisory services to the commissioners of the agency and as well as other agency offices and bureaus. And prior to that, I served in the Mass Media Bureau, which dealt largely with broadcast radio and TV licensing and regulation, as well as cable TV industry issues. I also had a bit of a secondary career at the Patent and Trademark Office, where I was serving for about 10 years or so as a senior trademark examining attorney. And that is about it. And with that, I just wanted to say how delighted I am to be joining you all with the Tech Commission team, and I'm really looking forward to that and seeing some familiar faces from the old days like Frank. And I could have mentioned like Jonathan Adelstein, who I don't see here tonight, but he was chairman at the FCC in the days when I was there as well. So it's a little bit like a homecoming here. So happy to be here, and thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful. And so we really are fortunate that Arlington can have this kind of volunteer group with the experience and depth and breadth. I mean, it really is it's a gift of the locale that we can have so many people who have such rich and robust backgrounds. So delighted. So glad that Andrea and Gary, you could join us. And I just wanted you to get a sense about the experience and the perspective of this group and their willingness to roll up their sleeves and look at some of the issues and look out beyond, look at the future and see some of the issues. So the areas of some of these are we requested again because I think you might have recalled that when we looked at the legislative priorities, at one point from Northern Virginia, none of it was tech, which concerned all of us. So we went back at it. Sometimes you ask more than once. So a shout out, Mike. I appreciate you doing the first one, the electronic medical records standardization. For those of you who may not have heard us discuss about the challenge of having some of these medical records being aligned and standardized. So this is a request to look at that in terms of the healthcare providers really cooperate so that there's a sharing of accurate health data, and we'll see where that goes. And we really appreciate you drafting that, Mike, and getting that idea. And really, what these are is ideas that we're throwing into the pot, and TACUS really has reserved the right to come back and say, look, could you flesh this out? Could you talk to us a little bit more? So these were our areas. Not surprising, we talked about bridging the digital divide, the access to high-speed internet. We define it a little bit faster than what Frank outlined, but we'll take it. A gig up and a gig down would be a good starting place, but at least making sure that high-speed internet access is available, not just to the rural areas that don't have high-speed internet access, but also to our county. Some individuals who the affordability is obviously the not geography, but affordability is the obstacle. And then one that I think John Burke, you were the one who did the digital records management in terms of looking at that. And there's some who, there's been some debate about where that gets handled, but I think again, it's an issue that is good to bring up and say, how are we going to deal with this now and into the future? And then the final one, Mike Carlton, I think we had reported, or Frank, I think, had reported that Connecticut is now making the calls free for the families. So we put it there again, just to see if there's an opportunity for the reasonable fees for families to call those who are incarcerated. So we'll see what gets put on the agenda. But all commissions, all Arlington commissions were asked for 3 or 4 items that they thought would be really important from their commission's perspective. And so this is what we submitted, and we'll let you know if something, if anything comes back in terms of asking us questions or wanting some more, more clarity around some of the things that we've recommended. We probably, because the new deadline, our deadline was, I think, July 20th. They extended the deadline to August 20th. If there's a burning issue that any of you think of I would think that we still could submit something, just because they are still in the divergent mode from a board point of view. They haven't converged totally yet. So if there's something that any of you, please feel free to send Frank and me a suggestion, and we can pass that on. Any questions about this list or the state legislative priorities? Okay, well, again, thanks to those of you who were able to respond and for us to be able to get that to them quickly so we could get up in the queue. Now the next on our list is reviewing the draft June minutes since we took July off. Any change? I know, Frank, you had some changes that you sent to Angela. Any other changes anybody can bring up now? Anything that as you looked at the minutes? Mike, were you about to?
Yeah, Mary, I don't have a kind of an edit idea, but I have a proposal to make about the style of our minutes whenever that's appropriate.
Oh, okay. So just in general.
Yeah.
Okay. So not specifically about the June minutes, but yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Great.
You've got it.
Got it. Okay. All right. So we'll get to that, Mike, after we either amend or adopt or any other any changes to the minutes? Any additions, deletions, corrections anyone want to make? All right. Well, I will entertain a motion to accept. Okay, Frank, you're muted though.
All right, I'm raising
You
my
move?
hand. Okay,
All
so
right,
I
you
move
move?
that we adopt the minutes.
All right.
second.
Any second? Okay, John, second. All right. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Any
Aye.
any opposing? Any abstentions? All right, minutes adopted. And then Mike, you wanted to make a recommendation just in general about minutes.
Yeah, I'd like to propose that we change the style of our minutes in view of the fact that the meetings are being recorded, you know, when they're entire and verbatim. The value of creating a narrative synopsis of what was said seems like it's one piece of it that might be redundant. And what I'd like to propose is prominently, maybe right after the attendance and the date, that we have a salient actions section. And that we record, for example, whenever the board asks us for advice and whenever we render advice. So for example, in the legislative proposals, that would be very straightforward. We would have recorded that we received this request for advice, we rendered this advice, and then the real fun will be, and then we see what becomes of that advice. So we may want to record it. But
track it.
But I think that at least in my 3+ years now, we haven't often had that sort of traction in the conversation or even the follow through. So I would say at any given meeting, it'd be more useful to have minutes that say, here's what's outstanding in terms of advice rendered, advice sought, information requested, information received, and basically have a salient actions segment of the minutes.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense because there are quite a few outstanding at the moment, right? There's quite a few things that we have weighed in on, and they're still being either the decision has been made or not, or and to Jack's point, I think one of the things we're trying to do is align the decision making of the board that the commission is trying to get ahead of that, right? Because one of the challenges we've had is just reacting. So for example, last year, I think we got a request for legislative, Frank, keep me honest here. I think we got a request for legislative list in November, right? So we said, look, could we have it a little earlier so that we could actually be able to talk about and say why we think these are the critical things. So that makes sense. That makes sense. Any other comments about that proposal? Anybody else?
I'd
John?
support it. I'd support it because I think, there are votes that we take, and they should probably be highlighted right up top, just so you don't have to go digging through things for them.
Okay. So really, it's a matter of just where things are. So you just the actions and the outstanding items, having it a little bit quicker so you could see it. Okay. All right. Any other comments about that? Any other? I think we can do that without vote. I think we can do that with just action. Angela, we can, look at that in terms of what what the follow-up action items are.
I have
yeah.
So I have a couple requests for the website, for the Tech Commission website, in the same kind of vein, when it's appropriate, Mary.
Yep. Go ahead.
I think it would be really helpful if we could get the letters that we sent posted, and the presentation that Mike prepared that we sent as an attachment. Whenever we're sending things to the board, I think the transparency behooves posting that on the website, saying that this letter was sent, just as make it available to the general public, because I don't see those as being available to the general public right now. They're not up there. So
I think it's difficult. Yeah, let me check, John. Angela, I think they are there. It's just they're not as visible, right, Angela? They are there.
Yeah, there's so many pages for the Tech Commission that it's hard to keep up with what page has what. It would be nice if it was narrowed down to maybe 2 pages and everything is on those 2 pages. But there's about 4 different web site browsers to go to for Tech Commission information. So it's kind of scattered all over the place. If we can narrow it down, then we can get everything in one place.
Because to your point, I mean, it kind of combines, Mike and John, what you've said is the having these salient actions very visible on the front of the Tech Commission website as well. Because John, even though you know what it is, you couldn't find it on the website, right? Yeah. Okay, so it's a matter of, so Angela, let's take that as our action item to look at how we can make that more friendly in terms of being able to access because for example, Mike's presentation is there as well, but it's very difficult I think, for people to find. So that's, and I think we were going to do it based on being able to search, because at the moment it's based on meeting when it occurred, the meeting when it occurred. So maybe now we need to look at it. Obviously, we could have a meeting, but also being able to do it on topic.
Okay.
So
I will work with the web people to get that done.
To see how we can, and Angela, obviously I can help too if we need to make some decisions about as you said, narrowing. I mean, you've already gotten Andrea and Gary and Richard, you're already on there. So that's up to date, but we appreciate the comment, and let's see if we can make it easier for people to find what we've done.
Great.
Good enough.
Any other comments?
I do have one substantive request. The county board approved in their July recess meeting, and Richard, this is your first potential request for liaison. The item 65, the indefeasible rights use agreement for dark fiber in National Landing, and I was hoping that we could get a presentation on that.
Yes, and we have asked for a presentation on that, John. So we will with JBG, and we will. I think we were going to look. Actually, I think we were going to look at September if that's possible. And if it isn't, then we'll push it to October. But yeah, that's on our September. And the other the other thing we want to look at is we'd like Raj, the CIO of schools, to brief us, because there's, as you know, there's a lot of money coming into educational systems. So we want to get a sense from him about how they're looking at tech and what they're doing. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Mary, specifically, I was actually more interested from the county perspective on whether or not we have a policy about this, and we're creating the innovation zone in Crystal City. I'm not going to call it National Landing. Lived here too long. But what about other corridors, right? What about the Ballston-Roslyn corridor? What about the Columbia Pike? Is there how does that fit in with the general policy on leasing dark fiber? Do we have a policy on leasing dark fiber, et cetera, et cetera? So I was looking at it more from a county policy perspective than I know why JBG wants it. That's pretty obvious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's and we'll Richard, is that possible for September? And then Mike, I know you have your hand up.
So I guess take a little bit of time and formulate a couple of questions that you have. And if I can get a written set of questions, I'll find the right person to answer those questions versus me trying to intuit what you think you might need and getting it wrong. Is that okay?
So we haven't even received a briefing on it, Richard, because it was posted on the 19th of July, which was after our last meeting, but before before this meeting. So we haven't really officially been told about it, other than what maybe individuals as a commission, other than what individuals may have gone and read or potentially watched the board meeting.
Okay.
So I don't even know what questions to ask generally, because we haven't been briefed on it.
Okay. I will ask, I'll get with Jack, who's a little bit closer to that specific item, and a couple of Jack who are on that side of the house, and see what we can come up with the presentation.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Richard. Mike?
And I'll just say, speaking for myself, and I hope it's helpful, I can sharpen that up a little bit. And that is, given the role that the commission has played on Arlington Connect in the past, it would be reasonable to assume that we would wish to continue to be rendering advice when it came time to actually lease. And then the part of the announcement that John was referencing that was the most perplexing to me was the duration of the agreement, which I think was 80 years. And I'm delighted to have Gary and some others on here. I've done a lot of telecommunications purchasing for the federal government. I've not really done any selling, but 80 years, if I've got the number right, is a tremendously long time to enter a commitment with a single developer. And I'm not clear why we wouldn't have made the period of time shorter and renewable based on some set of circumstances. Certainly the money exchange, by the time you deflate it out 80 years, couldn't possibly be of any value to Arlington taxpayers who paid for the infrastructure. So I don't mean to confine you to that, but I'd say for me, one of the things is, why were we not consulted given our past interest and contributions to the topic? And then why would the lease be so long, or the agreement be so long?
Yeah, I think the first one, Mike, Frank and I did have a conversation with Jack about this gets into the decision making, right, in terms of alignment and the non-disclosures between the county and JBG before it was officially announced. But I think all those things, it'll be helpful to, one is what was the underlying assumptions to have that extended time, right? That's one question. And then the second question is, moving forward, is there, and Jackie, I do see your hand, moving forward, is there, what's the policy frame for the dark fiber with others, given that now we've established one relationship with JBG? And so, and also we'd love to hear about, I mean, I I know in just in principle that there was some support for the digital equity in the county, which was a really helpful. But all those things would be helpful for us to hear. So if it is possible, it'd be great for us to have it at our September 22nd meeting, so we could get a sense, right, about not only this, I don't, this, as you and I think Mike and John have outlined, what we'd like to know is what the kind of the underlying assumptions and the principles moving forward. What's the drivers for making those decisions, right? Jackie?
And Mary, if I might, the briefing could just include a description of the process by which such decisions are made. In our IT governance, we were advocating that Jack should be involved. You just spoke sort of with the assumption that Jack was involved for the part. That sounds good. But obviously someone in the procurement side must have been involved, somebody in economic development. And I'm not trying to dictate it. I'm trying to understand it.
Right. Just so we have kind of the map, the decision map. Yeah. Jackie, and then
Yes,
Jackie, you'll be the last.
Yes, my question is actually somewhat related to all of the others that have been mentioned, because on our past briefings and discussions on why it was not being used the way we had initially anticipated when we made the investment, we talked about where the policies and the assumptions for leasing might be having might need to be changed in order to promote use. And so my question is, since that time and those discussions that we have, were there any changes made in the policies or the assumptions that are that were the basis for the JBG, or that may be presumably going to be the basis for any future things that were made to make it more attractive? Like the length of time might be an example of that, but there's probably others that you don't necessarily get in the type of presentation that was done for the for the public for the decision.
Great. Thanks so
Thank you.
much. All right. We actually see this, Gary and Andrea, you're already good influence, because this might be the first time that we ended maybe like 3 or 4 minutes before the end of the meeting, before 7:30. So we try to end on time and start on time. So, but this was a good meeting. Thank you. So Richard, we will connect on that to get that ready, hopefully for September. If not September, then October. Thank you all. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion that we adjourn.
All right, John, second. I hear a second.
I second.
You guys are just playing. All right. all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any opposed to ending? All right. Well, thanks everybody. And John, congratulations on Hannah. It's wonderful. We would like a photo, John. Be nice for you to send us one.
Yes.
Oh,
from Andrea and Gary. Thank you.
Okay, I got it. All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Welcome, Andrea and Gary and Richard.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.